The lure of the WWE is irresistible. The lure of WrestleMania, even more so. Even those that leave the company are eventually pulled back in. And the grandest pay-per-view for the grandest stage of them all sure is a good bit of bait. Bret Hart left the WWF in 1997, screwed by his father figure Vince McMahon, and it was both Hart's name and Vince's eye that was blackened by the encounter. Nothing would fix this wound, except maybe WrestleMania 26. Goldberg hated Triple H throughout 2003. In 2010, Trips completely wrote off Goldberg's chances of a Hall of Fame induction because he said he wasn't around for long enough. Goldberg returned for a 4-match shot in 2016, which led to his induction. Turns out his in-ring tenure was off by about 10 minutes. Mick Foley came back after criticizing the Katie Vick angle to put Edge over at WrestleMania 22, and Shane McMahon returned 10 years later, 6 years after relinquishing his birthright. For the WWE, no match is impossible. But today's tale takes the bronze and oily shape of Hulk Hogan, and while we might think of him as synonymous with the WWF, you gotta remember how much Vince hated him towards the end as well. Hulk Hogan, at the height of his WWF fame, promised Vince McMahon that he would never work for a competitor, which was kind of lucky because there was no other viable competitor around at the time. Ted Turner subsequently bought into the pro wrestling game and offered Hogan millions and creative control to run wild all over WCW. This annoyed Vince to such an extent that he once threatened to approach the WCW booth at a convention and bait Hogan into hitting him in order to steal Nitro's thunder. Yet even he was brought back for one last hurrah against none other than the People's Champion in an Icon vs. Icon match at WrestleMania X7, which was, to put it bluntly, outstanding. But it wasn't the original plan. The WWF originally wanted another icon to square off against the man they once tried to bury as the huckster, one Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, Austin was aloof at the proposal, fiercely protective over his character, and with a bloodhound-like ability to sense Hogan's previous self-serving bullshit, Austin turned down a massive payoff. Austin is on record as citing his suspicions over the potential match quality, but that doesn't really add up when you consider that he instead settled for a match against Scott Hall, which was, well, it was indeed a match. Instead, it rings true of a man fearful that Hogan would hijack the crowd. And you know what Hogan certainly definitely did do? He hijacked the crowd. Seconds into the match, Hogan flew the Rock halfway across the ring, and Hogan's desire to slip into the red and yellow mode was there to see in black and white. He flexed his 24-inch pythons and soaked up the nuclear roar of the crowd. Scrutinize the footage closely, and you will see an expression of pure, unexpected triumph etched over Hogan's face. In contrast, look at the way that Rock's eye twitches, his cool and baby-face status lost. Yet, without missing a beat, the two pros changed their narrative into something even greater. Hogan was now the face, Rock now a pseudo-heel. And you watch it back now and you can see the Rock snarling and spitting, making his motions as the bad guy in subtle ways. Another interesting factor is the NWO's appearance at the end of the match. This wasn't originally planned. This was Vince pulling the trigger on a storyline that was meant to be months down the line. Hogan had returned and ignited the crowd in such a fashion that there was no way that he could ever be a heel again. The turn was instant, and the NWO were as good as disbanded. Now, Hogan agreed to do the clean job and put The Rock over. This was never actually Austin's concern, but his concern was that he'd be eaten by Hogan, that his character would have been eclipsed by the nostalgia charge and he would have become an afterthought. Austin was no Hulkamaniac. His animosity towards Hogan dated back to their shared days in WCW. Austin winced at Hogan's tired Patriot act and opened up a can of verbal whoop-ass on him during his brief shooter stint in ECW. The chemistry just wasn't there, and his choice was not only best for him, but best for business. It would have been impossible for Austin versus Hogan to have contained the same magnetic feel as it did between The Rock and Hogan. Austin would have resisted. The Rock, well, he just leaned into it. And it's funny, isn't it? By turning down a potentially good match, the WWE made an electrifying one.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe below, and if you're looking for more content like this, then try a few things that are floating about around my ears. Might be fun. I can't promise it though, but it might be.